Spirit talk, walk, spirit talk with me. Tell me the story, show me the hidden key. Spirit talk, spirit talk, come and set my people free.
And we're going to be hearing more of that music at the end of the program, Walk Spirit, Walk, Talk Spirit. Welcome, George Reed Johnson Jr.
Hello, Joni. How are you?
Great to be talking with you. I'm very excited.
Thank you for having me on your show. This is so nice.
It's great. And before we could spend probably half a day at least, if not a whole day, talking with George about all his amazing stories in the jazz community in DC and around the world. So George, we're going to make sure that by at least 10:30 or 10:35, we're going to switch into your discussion about Ghana. But let's start. If you could just give us 2 minutes about your early childhood or growing up in DC, and then we're going to jump into some of your contributions. I think we're going to start with when you were a bus driver. But let's just briefly, before we get into your bus driving stories and how that relates to music, tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Well, thank you, Joni. I grew up in Washington, D.C., born 1950, Columbia Hospital. My early growing up was my grandfather was on 10th Street Northwest, and then we lived on Oakdale Street. And I went to Mott Elementary. Then we moved. Once my mother and father got on their own, we moved in Southeast, and I went to Knoll, Sousa, and Spingarn. I came out of Spingarn in 1968. And during the civil rights movement, Vietnam protests. And it was a very interesting coming up. And my father loved music, and that's how I got into music.
That's great. George, to start your story about your being a bus driver and how that links to some of your music.
Yes, I started driving for Metrobus in 1972. And I had been, like I had mentioned before, I had been practiced. I got the music from my father. He had a hip record player. He loved the music, and he had a microphone. And when he wasn't home, I would start practicing. And I ended up getting my own system and just listened to a lot of Charlie Parker, all types of music, and when I was a Metro bus driver, I'd be listening to Charlie Parker. I'd have one earplug in my ear. And that's how I wrote most of my Bird lyrics. And then I had heard about the Pigfoot, John Malachi, in 74. So this year I celebrate 50 years of performing and 50 years since knowing Rusty. I met him in 1974 at the Pigfoot.
Can you hear me now, Joni?
Wow. Okay, Rusty, welcome.
Well, thank you, Joni, and thank you for inviting me. It's just been a wonderful friendship. I met the folks at Pigfoot actually when Bill Harris was having parties in his backyard before he opened Pigfoot.
And Rusty, there are actually people who don't know what the Pigfoot was or is. So tell people.
Okay. Well, there in Washington, D.C., there was a guitarist by the name of Bill Harris. Mm-hmm. And he actually put out a solo jazz guitar in the mid-1950s. And in the early 1970s, every Labor Day, he would have a party in his backyard. And I met Kenny Burrell, in fact. Kenny came over to my house to take a break from one of these parties. But it was always Bill's dream to open up a club. And to open up the space became available on Rhode Island Avenue, right near the intersection of 18th and Rhode Island Avenue. It had been a club before then, but it became vacant. He opened it up, and it's a really great story. Bill Harris was a reformed alcoholic and a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And he opened a club, named it Pigfoot, and it was actually.
Oh, somebody's dog.
Actually, it was named after a song sung by Bessie Smith. Give me a Pigfoot and a bottle of beer.
Wow.
And to really set up the scene, at Pigfoot in terms of it being not only a performance space, but a learning experience. He hired John Malachi as his principal musician. John Malachi was a, a DC pianist going back to the 40s. In fact, he was my father-in-law's best friend from before World War II. And John was a pianist in Billy Eckstine's orchestra with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Art Blakey. Art Blakey was a close friend of his. And so John would have workshops there. And I'd be, of course, a regular at the club. And that's how, that's how I really connected. It was really, George being there at the club. But George was such a serious person about the musicians that I found out in a short while that he already taped interviews that I've done on the air of musicians like Dexter Gordon. I mean, he's got an incredible array of tape recordings of not only performances, but of interviews that I did with prominent musicians, including one that I'll always treasure, the one with Eddie Jefferson.
Yes.
Yes, and so we have a lot of stories to cover in about 10 minutes. We will be having hopefully George on when he gets to Ghana. But tell us briefly, George, about Eddie Jefferson, and also want to make sure that we highlight Pharoah Sanders, your connection with him, and James Moody. But,
well, Eddie Jefferson is the father of the art of jazz vocalese. That's writing and singing lyrics to improvised solos. My father had been playing his music since I was a kid. He was playing King Pleasure, John Hendricks. Moody's Mood for Love was the song of the century. Everybody knew Moody's Mood for Love, and we knew it as a kid. So I was learning his songs and King Pleasure songs and John Hendricks songs and Frankie Lyman and everybody else. So I had learned a lot of songs. I had already learned these songs. So when I walked into the Pigfoot and I signed up at the Pigfoot, the first thing John asked me, what did I want to sing? I said, A Night in Tunisia. He said, well, what do you know about A Night in Tunisia? I said, play it just like Charlie Parker, and he played it. And we fell in love. I mean, I fell in love with him that moment. I was at the Pigfoot 4 or 5 nights a week, and John ended up being like a second father, man. And
wow.
yes, and for 15 years until his death. We met in 74. He died in 87. So 13 years. We were very close friends. I would go visit him at his house. He would pick me up, and that's how I wrote my first song. He wrote it out for me in his basement.
And
Yes.
that song was?
That song was a song called Opening Night. I kept telling John, I had this song. So one day he said, George, come over in the basement. And I sung it to him. He wrote it out. And then he asked me, what was the name of it? I said, Opening Night. And so he said, we're going to feature you at the Pigfoot. It's going to be your opening professional day. And the song was CBS and all the rest, and Warner Brothers and all the others. Send a telegram, make them understand just what I want to be. All my life, stress and strife, sure to become a celebrity. A poet and know it all, I've done it all, and had a ball. A poet and know it all, I've done it all, and had a ball. So what must I do to get this interview? I can sing and I can dance if I only had the chance to show CBS. And so that was a song, and that was the day. It was in 1975. That was the day that John introduced me as Your Majesty George V. Johnson. I have the cassette tapes.
Wow, that's something. Now, quickly tell us, and again, we're going to have to spend more time with you in the future, but tell us how, when you were driving a bus for many years, you, I think, at least wrote one song that was related to being a bus driver.
Yes, I wrote My Little Suede Shoes. I was on the Massachusetts line. I think that was the N4. It was coming from past American University all the way downtown, and it was this one young lady who would get on my bus and sit behind me every morning. She got on at one of the embassies. It was a Japanese embassy, actually. And she was tall and she was beautiful, and it was one of those things where you see somebody You see them every day, but you never get a chance to meet them. They get away. And so, I saw that pretty little girl today. She only lived a half a block away. Although we didn't get the chance to speak, I knew one day that we would finally meet. Now, that's Charlie Parker's solo.
Mm.
That was like the first Charlie Parker complete solo that I wrote lyrics to. And so,
Wow.
I got a chance to sing them later on in life. When I moved to New York, I was on with 30 Charlie Parker compositions.
Wow.
So
Wow. So
that's
that,
how that's how things started gravitating.
and
I
when
just,
you were the bus driver, a lot of other musicians would get on that bus with you. I understand.
yes, my last run was a G2. I would go past all the way to Georgetown. I would ride past Duke Ellington School of Performing Arts. That's when they was filming the first Exorcist in Georgetown, where the priest jumped out the window down the long steps. They were shooting out there every day. But during that time, I would pick up Wallace Roney,
Wow.
Antoine, Dave Marsh, Ron Sutton, quite Eric Allen, drummer Eric Allen. These are all young kids. They were like 13, 14 years old, and their conversations were totally different. They were talking about Bird, about Train on the bus, and they always called me Mr. Johnson, Mr. Johnson.
Oh.
Then I ended up playing with these young men later on in life, when I met them all up at Howard University. So,
Wow.
and they're most of them are big stars, rest in peace, Wallace. But me and Wallace became very good friends.
Mm.
And Jerry Allen, as a matter of fact.
Wow. Now tell us, I know you have so many stories, but tell us about Pharoah Sanders.
Well, I had moved to New York in '79. In fact, I rode the first night. One night I was up at St. Nick's Pub, and I saw Leon Thomas. And Leon Thomas said, "George, come down to the Village Vanguard on Saturday because Pharoah Sanders is going to be there." So when I got there, I know many of you know about the kitchen. We went back in the kitchen. It was Pharoah, all the cats, John Hicks, Dr. Art Davis. I think it was Greg Bandy on drums then, and all these different musicians. So Leon introduced me, said, "Pharoah, this is George Johnson. He sang with James Moody and Lou Donaldson." And Pharoah's eyes lit up. He said, "You want to sing one?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What you want to sing?" So I knew he was closely associated to John Coltrane, and I wrote the lyrics to Moment's Notice in '74. That was the second lyrics that I wrote. And I had been sitting on them for 6 years. And so I told him, he asked me what I wanted to sing. I said, Moment's Notice. His eyes lit up. He said, "Tell John Hicks how you want it." I went to John Hicks. I said, "I want to do Moment's Notice." I said, "Play it just like Blue Train." And he played that song. And Eddie was just murdered the year before. So when I sang that song, he introduced me. The crowd just roared. And I sang Moment's Notice. It was so beautiful because Betty Carter was there and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was sitting behind the piano. It was a wonderful night. And then he said, "Do another one." I did My Little Suede Shoes. He said, "Do another one." I said, then I did Star Eyes. And then I literally left the club in tears. But I had given him my telephone number to my future mother-in-law's and father-in-law's house. And I had been living on the subway. I had been riding the subway at that time.
Mm.
I told him what I was doing. I rode the subways for 3 months. That's how I survived in New York with one eye open, And so they said, "Well, George, come on out here and stay with us." And I gave Pharoah their number. So that Friday, Pharoah called and said, "George, we're going to be hanging out in New York City. Would you like to hang out with us?" I said, "Yeah." So I took the address down. And when I got to the address, it was Power Station Studio. I walked in there, and they was recording When the Lights Are Low. There was Pharoah, Bobby Hutcherson, John Hicks, Dr. Art Davis, Billy Higgins, Amir Barak was there. There was a lot of famous musicians there. It was Steve Turre, Danny Moore, and I watched them do that one about an hour working on that song. Then Pharoah walked up to me and said, "George, would you like to sing your lyrics?" I said, "Yes." And we recorded it, and we did one take. It was like less than 10 minutes. Bam. And
Wow.
that's how you got Moment's Notice. His sounds will mellow, soft and warm. You'll feel his spirit hum along. John Coltrane, play love and magic. Listen to the message of his song. John Coltrane, glad you came along. So that's the song that's really prolonged my career. They kept me out in public for like 20 something years because I didn't record again. And James Moody was
I still play it on the air, George.
yeah, yeah, everybody. It was the most popular song on the album, probably. Everywhere I went, I was hearing Moment's Notice.
Wow. Okay, you're listening to WPFW 89.3 FM. This is Two Heel DC with me, Joni, and Chuck Hicks is also on the line with us. But we are very happy and excited to be featuring a legend in our community, a jazz legend and more, and that is George V. Johnson Jr. Also joining us is Rusty Hassan. And George V. Johnson Jr. is moving to Ghana tomorrow, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But we're very honored and excited to have George V. Johnson on. He is definitely part of the WPFW family, knows Katia Stitt very well, and has been on the air with Robin Holden, of course, Rusty, Ellen Carter, and many, many more. You want to say a word about Katia before we move into our talk about you moving to Ghana?
Yes, Katia, I've been one of her fans since she's been on the radio, and actually I knew her father, Sonny Stitt, before I met her.
Wow.
And when he passed, but actually I met him in New York. Mm-hmm. I met him in New York. When I was living in New York, I had an apartment on top of the Dojo Restaurant on St. Mark's and 3rd Street. And Arnold Sterling came and stayed with me. And so I took Arnold Sterling out on the street. And then that night we called up Lou Donaldson. He was one of Lou Donaldson's favorite saxophone. And so Lou said, meet us at Fat Tuesdays because Sonny Stitt is going to be playing. So it was me and Arnold Sterling. We met Lou Donaldson with Sonny Stitt. And that was the most beautiful night in my whole life that I'd ever seen. Them three on the stage playing alto saxophone. And wow, it was amazing. And so so when I met Pharoah, it's like my whole career, took off, and then I got the job on the railroad. And I was also singing with James Moody. So that's another story of James Moody, how I met Moody. I ended up singing with Moody for 6-7 years.
Wow. Just talk for another minute or so about James Moody and what you
Oh, yeah. I met James Moody up at Carnegie Hall. I met him up there. And then one night he said, after that introduction, he told me to meet him at Sweet Basil's. They were doing a tribute to Eddie Jefferson at Carnegie Hall. The Manhattan Transfers, Dizzy Gillespie, Richie Cole, James Moody, John Hendricks and friends and family, Bobby McFerrin. And so all of them came to the club. And that's when James Moody presented me at the club and, introduced me as, Eddie Jefferson protege. And after that night, Moody gave me $200. And after that night, I didn't sleep on the subway anymore. And ended up getting a job. And, I moved to Trenton and got married. Then I got a job on the railroad.
Wow. So from the bus to the railroad.
Yes, retired from New Jersey Transit Rail.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a local train to Trenton. Yeah, that was me.
George, how did you meet Eddie Jefferson? How was that connection made?
Oh, yeah. How I met Eddie. Well, one day at the Pigfoot, John Malachi and Bill Harris told me that Eddie Jefferson was coming to Fort DuPont. And man, I went to Fort DuPont. I lived at South Hill High Rise at Southern Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue. So it was only like walking distance from where I lived at. And I went over there and Eddie was playing with Richie Cole, Reuben Brown, Marshall Hawkins, and Bernard Sweetney. And I was sitting on the grass and I sat beside this old couple. And little did I know, this car was coming down the hill. I almost had an accident. His muffler came off. Eddie said, this guy said, I'm so glad I didn't drive. I said, well, I'm glad I didn't drive. He said, he's one of the performers here. And I looked at him closely. It was Eddie Jefferson sitting right beside me. And after I met him, I clinged on him like white on rice. I would call him up almost every 3 or 4 days. And whenever he came to DC, he would stay at my house. Whenever I would go to New York and stay at his house, on Raymond Boulevard. And he introduced me to a lot of people. For 3 years, we had this relationship. And then one day I would follow him around to different cities. And one day he was at the Grendel's Lair in Philadelphia. And it was like the last song of the first set. He had Richie Cole, he had Gerald Price, Marshall Hawkins, and Philly Joe Jones, I believe. Yeah. And the last song, the people started hollering and screaming. He said more and more, more and more. And then he hollered out, I got rhythms in 5 flats. He said, this is one of my students, George E. Johnson from Washington, D.C. He's next in line, next in line. And
Wow.
I recorded it. I had
Wow.
the cassette tape. That was the tape that I showed John. Oh man, that's a historic tape.
Okay, so I hate to cut off this story, but we want to make sure we leave time because we're going to be running out of time to talk about your journey tomorrow to Ghana.
Yes.
So tell us, George, I know there's a lot to share, but tell us maybe quickly why you're going to Ghana and the fact that you're actually moving there, and then you can tell us what you're going to be doing. But tell us.
Yes. Okay. Last October, last year, a good friend of mine named Sweet Lutalo Olutosin, a jazz singer from Atlanta, who became very close. I introduced him to Washington, D.C. So he said to me, he knew my lyrics in my songs like Mother Africa and Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit. He called me up. He said, George, you got to come to Ghana. Because he retired as a colonel from the U.S. military, Army. And he moved there and bought property right on the ocean and bought some property up in the mountains. He said, George, you need to come to Ghana, come to Ghana. So I saved up my round trip ticket. And first thing I did was Google up to see what was Ghana all about. Because you always I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Then I discovered that one of my students, when I was teaching at this Pan-African school during the 80s, his name is Diallo Sombre. He was the one that coordinated the year return, the 400-year anniversary of the transatlantic slave trade. So I said, wow. So I knew I was going to be in good company. So when I got to Ghana, it was like, as soon as I stepped foot on the ground, man, it was like miracles and revelations and dreams come true every day that I was there. So I went to see, I went to the Aburi Mountains at Botanical Gardens to see the parade of the king and the chief sacred warriors. And they was marching up in chariots with gold and clinty cloths. There was some brothers playing some music in the background. They had trombones and trumpets and drums, and they were playing the high life music, Mother Africa. And I wrote lyrics to it 40-some years ago. That's the song that I taught Diallo and them when they was going to APAS. So when I got there, I found that he was receiving a humanitarian award, Lifetime Achievement Award, for what he did with the year return. So when I went there, I saw him and they set me at this table with this young man. And we started conversating about why was I there. And I told him I was there to see Diallo Sombre. He was one of my former students. And I was teaching him a song called Mother Africa. He said, yeah. I asked him, what did he do? He said his name is Osborne Mugabe. And he said that he has this foundation called the Oz Brain Cares Foundation. And they have 350 young girls that they teach them how to live and how to think and how to make it in life. And I said, can they sing? He said, yeah. I said, I'd like to come to your school and do a master class. So later that night, I got a text from him to come up there on November 11. When I arrived, he had 120 children there waiting for me to sing. And I had Mother Africa, Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit, and St. Thomas. So I started teaching the class. First class, I divided them up to like 33, 33, and 33. But when I got into first class, it was like 3 hours. And I was completely drained. I said, I can't do it 3 classes. Let's take them all outside. So he brought all 120 of the kids outside. And I broke down the songs, but phrase by phrase, repetition. And they learned Mother Africa, St. Thomas, and Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit. And the videos are on YouTube. So I started a 501c nonprofit organization called Rhythms of Mother African Unity Program Foundation. And I'm going to be raising money. I'm starting my own musical ministry. So all the countries that I name in Mother Africa, I like to go in each one of those countries and start the program because they love Mother Africa and they love Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit. And so the portal has opened. And I'm entering. It's time to go back because I'm doing things in Africa that I could never do here. I couldn't do there. You know, there's so much going on here. And it's time for me to go. And so I had my railroad retirement. I got a house up in the mountains.
Wow.
It cost me $300 a month. I paid 3 months in advance. It has 3 bedrooms furnished, Wi-Fi, air conditioning. I have a
Wow.
house. I have a property manager, housekeeper live in, and I'll be teaching at the school 3 days a week, 2 hours, and the rest of the days I'll probably maybe hook up with Diallo. He has a school with 350 kids, and I'll be going there teaching as well. And so I'm just so thankful that God has preserved me, and I'm able to go over there and teach my lyrics and do things that I could never do. Everything that I think about materialize. It's
Mm.
something real spiritual over there. And if you're in tune with the mother nature and with the motherland, all the types of things are open for you. I hear so many horror stories, but for me, it was totally different, man. I was there. I was living there with the people. I was in tune, living with the people, and it's very raw. It's beautiful. The people love you, and they perceive us. The TVs, the news media, they don't present us in a positive fashion. They don't present them in a positive fashion. And so people got this thing that Africa is just as modern. It's beautiful, except when you look out your window, you see palm trees and coconut trees. They got major cities in these countries, man. It's just so beautiful. And there's no taxes and there's no mortgages. And you get a plot of land for $2,000 or $3,000 and then build
Wow.
your property at your own pace and up in the mountains surrounded by palm trees. It's just so beautiful. So I'm gone.
Wow.
I'm gone tomorrow. I'll be leaving tomorrow night. Flight.
And as we'll mention again, we hope that moving into the future, we'll be able to do some specials with you, perhaps not just with me, but together with other PFW programmers. We can have you on with some of the young people. Tell us briefly, what are some of your goals with the young people when you go to Ghana?
Well, what we're going to do, once I'm going to refine the lyrics, and once we get everything going, we're going to do a fundraiser. And there are musicians that I play with in Ghana, great musicians. They're going to record, they're going to perform with the children. We're going to do a big video production and then put on a fundraiser, invite the elders, the whole community, the kings, the chiefs, the president. And this is this is bigger than me now. This is it's growing already. And they already have my schedule already written down, and we're going to be doing so many things, and I plan to go. I've already got some interest in Tanzania, Kenya, Nigeria. So what I could do, I could rent a house in Tanzania or Kenya for like 3 months. The rent is so cheap, and just go there for 3 months and just go there and volunteer. I pay my own fare, I pay everything on my own. I'm giving everything. I'm giving to God. I'm giving. This is my mission. I've been chosen. This is what I'm doing. I'm giving. I'm not charging any money. And that's the reason why so many doors are opening up. I'm not going there to make money. I'm going there to teach and just I'm just so thankful.
Yes. And we have a special surprise for you, hopefully in a minute. So,
Oh, wow.
so
I'm done.
well, I'll just let people know that you are close to many people, of course, in this community, and one of them is someone who is often on this show and is on many, many other radio shows, and that is Dr. Greg Carr. He's going to be calling in a moment. I didn't
Oh,
send him
thank
the
you.
Zoom link, but he's getting ready to call in. And Rusty, do you have another question as we keep moving?
Yeah, George, it's really important in terms of the connection and the communication. How are you going to stay in contact with us here in the United States as
Well,
you?
I'm going to have maybe a daily blog every couple of days on YouTube. My channel, George E. Johnson Jr. I'll be broadcasting live from YouTube, showing you different things with the kids, performing, teaching, and moving around different locations, and a TikTok and Twitter. And I'm
Okay.
taking a break from Facebook right now. I
Mhm.
won't be on there for another 4 or 5 months. And
Uh,
so if you want to follow me, you can go on YouTube
mhm.
or Twitter or TikTok.
And what are you going to do with your collection of taped interviews, memorabilia, and papers and everything that you've collected over the years in your journey through the music and all the musicians, all of our heroes that you met? How are you going to take care and preserve all of those items?
That's a good question, Rusty, because I have about 100 VHS tapes. I got a couple suitcases of cassette tapes from the 70s. And what I did the last couple of weeks, I bought a VHS converter, digitizer. So I've been digitizing videotapes, and I found videotapes. Oh man, with James Moody, I mean Kelly Ellis Allen, with Askia Muhammad doing poetry, with Fred Falls. I mean, that Twins, American University. I don't have any. I got cassettes from the Pigfoot, from everything they ever did. I recorded James Moody, and I don't know what I'm going to do. They're here right now. I put this stored away. You know, God forsaken, nothing happens. But I'm going today. This rest of the day, I'm going to spend my day digitizing. I bought a demagnetizer, so that should take a lot of the static off the head of the VHS VCR. And so I'm gonna, and if they come clean, I'm gonna repost those videos. And so maybe I'll donate them at some time, someplace, you know, something.
Yeah,
something
like
else.
PFW.
Yeah,
So we're
yeah, I can do that.
we're waiting for Greg Carr. Mike, let me know if Greg Carr is on the phone. He texted me, so I know he's trying to call in, but
What's going on? Are you there, Joni?
welcome, Greg.
Hey, I know we're up against the clock. I just wanted to say hello. Hey, Joni, and hey, Baba George, man.
Hey man, you're my favorite person in the world, man.
No,
Come on.
you my favorite person, and I am not alone. I just wanted to call on behalf of everybody in Narrative and Nubia. Thank you for Narrative will set us free, and Sister Karen. And, you know, we just over the moon that you are Pan Africanist, not only in heart and spirit, but with your feet, Baba. You are literally. Hey man, listen, everybody, y'all should go to Your Majesty George V. Johnson Jr. and look at his site. I mean, I love that when you were rehearsing Scott Joplin's play and Oscar Brown's lyrics. Hey man,
Yeah.
but listen,
I'm gonna do a one-man play, man, with
Yeah.
Oscar Brown's lyrics, man. Yeah.
Sometime in the next 40 or 50 years, as you go into this next phase of work, brother, I just want to say that we are blessed to have you, to know you, to be with you. And what you all are talking about this morning is just the beginning. You know, we need about 15 to 20 volumes of memoirs, all annotated. And look, Narrative is there to help, brothers. So whatever you need, you know, they developing a whole thing. And we got to get you in there to do this work as well. We want to help in everything you're doing, Bob.
Well, you
Absolutely.
know, you and Karen inspired me to write that song. That's why I call it Narrative Will Set Us Free, because I was during the pandemic when you was presenting the classes. You know, I was there the first 50 episodes every weekend. That's how I wrote those lyrics, man. You and Karen, man, you inspired me to write those lyrics.
So we have to, you know, we have to remember on the radio, a lot of times people don't know each other. So if people do not know Dr. Greg Carr by now, you're missing out on something. A great, wonderful person is often on this show, but every Saturday, and you can find him on YouTube, In Class with Carr. And once you start checking out In Class with Carr, you'll find out about all his other things that he does Monday night. And he's now on Sirius XM Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And he was at least twice voted the best professor in HBCUs for at least 2 years from around the whole country. So we're happy to have him.
Listen, I know you're up against the clock. I appreciate you doing that. Listen, Baba George, safe travels. Love you, brother, and looking forward to this work. Because man, you, as much as you've done over the arc of 2 generations, you about to add a 3rd generation that's gonna make them first 2 look like you was clearing your throat. So we appreciate you, brother. We love you, and I'll talk to you.
I'll be posting in Nubia. I'll be posting in Nubia.
Yes, don't leave yet, Greg, because you know one of the things we'll see if we can do it with PFW, and we would love to work together with you, is have some specials with George V. Johnson Jr. and some of the young people from Ghana.
Well, that's a guarantee. That's a guarantee. When you get set up, Bob George, we want you to come live in Nubia on office hours on Monday night and give us updates, because you know you got an army of people ready to help you.
Most definitely. Me. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We love you, man. I'll hang on, but I'm gonna be quiet because I know you're up against a hard stop, Johnny.
I think we got an extra 2 minutes, so thanks to Magic Mike. George V. Johnson, what are some of your final thoughts today?
Well, I started a GoFundMe. It's called
we're not allowed to.
Okay. Okay, so more importantly, just support me when I come on YouTube, and just follow my journey, my spiritual journey. And I love everybody in Washington, D.C. I've been a family of PFW since its inception, 1977. I was
Yes.
at the first fundraiser, and I just love everybody. I'm just so thankful. I'm just so thankful.
Yes, and you work with Askia Muhammad and
Yes.
many, many, many others.
Nate, and then Nat Turner went to school with my father, went to Armstrong.
Wow.
So, at those jam sessions when I was a kid on Benning Road, the resident manager had jam sessions every weekend. And Paquita Betts, Buck Hill, Shirley Horn. These were the people that I saw when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, that I grew up on the weekends. And so I was born into the music. I'm just so
Yes, you
thankful of Washington, D.C., because I don't have a degree in music. all my degrees come from personal relationships.
Come
with
from
James
life.
Moody, with
Come-
Benny Golson and Lou Donaldson and Pharoah
from-
Sanders. That's my universities. And so I'm just so thankful that I was able to do this. And I'm just
Yeah, so anybody, and of course I'm from New York City, riding on those subways. Next time you see somebody sleeping on the subway, remember, he
yeah.
or she may turn into a fabulous musician star. Greg, you want to give your final thought today?
I would just say quickly again, thank you for everything, Baba George. And many of us talk about and the importance of unity and fighting for our common humanity. You've lived that walk. You've walked spirit. You talk spirit. You do it, to quote you. And I just want to say, on behalf of everybody who is listening, who has been touched by you and will be touched by you in the future, including all those children on the continent of Africa and beyond, that we bow and praise to you, as they might say in the Yoruba. We pay Dobali to you, Baba, and you are just remarkable and a real representation of our ancestors. So, Asante Sana, thank you, Baba. We love you.
Thank you, Bob.
Wow, thank you.
Hey, Joni, thank you for doing this, and really, it's been real honor and pleasure to join you. And George, safe travels, and keep. I will always treasure our friendship of over 50 years, and know your music is going to be kept on the airwaves of WPFW. Thanks again for all you've done here.
And thank you, Rusty. And yes, we're going to keep the music, and we're going to make sure that George introduces us to some of those young people. And we hope to bring some young people from here in DC onto the airwaves and working with you from Ghana. In one breath, George B. Johnson, just tell us about Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit, and then we meet.
Well, Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit was actually dedicated to McCoy Tyner. And it was recorded at Alan Johnson's studio, and with Don Vontae McCoy and Alan Johnson, Herman Burney, and Dana Hawkins, all great musicians. It's a great music. I wrote all the lyrics on there except for one song, which is Cantaloupe Island. And I have hundreds of songs, and hopefully I'll be able to record them. Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit is being played around the world. And a lot of people in Nigeria, Lagos, and I'm just so thankful.
Okay, and thank you, Magic Mike, for all your help. Thank you, George Reed Johnson. Thank you, Rusty, Greg Carr, and everybody. And let's keep your ears on now till we can hear a little bit of Walk Spirit, Talk Spirit, and wishing George safe travels. And we hope to talk to you very soon in the future.
Talk, walk, spirit, walk, talk, spirit, talk, walk, spirit, walk, talk, 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 spirit, walk, walk, walk. Talk, spirit, talk, walk, spirit, walk with me. Talk, spirit, walk, spirit, talk, spirit, talk, spirit, talk, walk, spirit, walk with me. Talk, spirit, walk, spirit, talk, spirit, talk, spirit, talk. Come and set my people free. Come on, talk, spirit, talk. Walk, spirit, walk with me. hidden keys. The narrative was set us free. Walk, spirit, talk, spirit, talk, spirit, talk, spirit, walk, spirit, walk, spirit, walk, spirit, talk, spirit.